So about 6 months ago, and I'll play the clip now, we made this video talking about how Norman Finkelstein, he was talking to Aaron Maté, and he says that the Palestinian cause is dead.
That comes to my last question. We looked at the genesis, the origins of this so-called historic agreement, and we looked at the consequences on paper of this historic agreement. But it does have significance, and one should not pretend as if it's a full-fledged farce. There are substantive, I wouldn't call it results, I would call it substantive indications from this agreement. The main indication is the Palestine cause is dead.
Norman Finkelstein says this, and play the video here. But okay, now that we saw this short video, I'll talk about the context and what he's talking about. So he was talking about, this was right after the UAE and Israel, and they signed that whole accord, right? So
the number of Arab states, Kuwait, UAE, and
so the
Bahrain,
Abraham
they
Accords.
recognized.
The Abraham Accords. So he was speaking specifically though about Arab leaders. He was saying that they don't even have to pay lip service. And then on top of that, he said that now there is Syria, now there is Yemen. So it's not even the plight of the Palestinians is perhaps not even the worst humanitarian situation you can say in the Middle East. So he kind of says these things, and then he says, well, the Palestinian cause is dead. Again, I think he's just speaking about Arab leaders and perhaps the popularity of this cause, let's say, within some parts of the population in countries in the region, so Arab countries in the region. But back then, and even now, I'm more sure after the thing that happened with Gaza, I think that the Palestinian cause is definitely not dead within people who live in the West, like in Western countries. Like the cause, you could just see when this happened, how strong it was. All these people who I never hear talking about any politics whatsoever, they knew about this. I was again shocked at like how much people know about this particular conflict. And I also mentioned that among the international community, at least they still like act like, you know, that it's an important issue. But more importantly, within Palestine, and of course, these are the people who are being oppressed and everything, perhaps the Palestinian cause, perhaps, and I really don't know this too much, so I'm just saying this like this, perhaps it became stronger than it was 10 years ago, because now we're hearing reports that, you know, it wasn't just Hamas and people living in Gaza, you know, there were like connections with other things that were going, other protests and everything in Jerusalem and other parts that were going on. So perhaps the Palestinian cause was even stronger within Palestine during this time. But yeah, Sam, sorry, the floor is yours. I think I can clarify.
What do we mean by the Palestinian cause?
Exactly. What do you mean by the Palestinian cause? I guess the Palestinian cause, it can be many things.
All right.
It's just it's not two-state solution or one-state solution. It's just, of course, these people are in that situation in Israel. Yeah, go ahead.
But let's get a specific. Two-state solution, I think, is dead, definitely, because of the leadership of the Arab world. It's significant, like they've accepted, I think, their status quo. And because I think if you look at the settlements, the way they're built geographically and all that, it's just there's no viable even geographical or practical, there is no viable state to be had from what is left of.
Pretty much.
Because of the way the settlements are they're sort of divided the place. And anyways, that's that. So that's my view anyway. One state solution, I mean, that's very much, it depends. I think we already have one state solution.
But I don't see these as being the Palestinian cause. These are different solutions proposed. These are solutions proposed. I guess the Palestinian cause would be just improving the situation of Palestinians. That would be the, now whatever whatever ends up being 2-state, 1-state, whatever. No, the cause is just
Well, in my
these
view,
people suffering and improving their situation, and people's awareness around it and the fight for that. I would say this whole last month, this whole battle and war in the last month has made it clear that it's still very much alive, both in Palestine and among activists and all kinds of normal people around the world.
Well, I think what we like, there's two. I think there's two ways this thing can go. Either the Palestinians on the West Bank and in Gaza will be integrated within the Israeli state, and that state, whatever it's going to become a move like a, in a either like they become Israelis or there's a mix. It becomes a multicultural state, or the Israeli population, the hardcore Jewish faith Zionist population, they destroy the Arab population of Gaza, mostly, less so West Bank and East Jerusalem. So this is the two ways that it can go. Right now, I think it's
two ways that we see. I mean, a lot of different things could happen. I mean, you never know.
Well, okay,
it could just drag on and
Egypt
different things become different 30, 40
right
years.
Now, but right now we are actually in the middle of the process of the latter way, the second way that I explained, that they are slowly and systematically trying to destroy them. And I don't see any reason for that to change, because it seems to be working.
Well, it's working Israel as in
not
them
under
taking
any pressure.
Well, it's working as in the sense of Israelis getting more territories and all that, but it's definitely not. The Palestinian population is not going anywhere. I mean, there are more Palestinians and Arab Palestinians in Israel than there are Jewish people.
Sure, but I mean, we'll see. 50 years from now, I doubt it. If the situation in Gaza is like this, I doubt it's going to continue. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know what do we.
One of my main points is really, I said this a few times. I just forgotten how many people know about the Palestinian cause, and for them, it's like, a big political issue. That's really perhaps one thing.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, there is all this talk. I saw this thing on Bad Faith as well, podcast, that they say, like, back in the days, you couldn't have said anything, but now numbers of the people of Congress have spoken up against.
But although I've told you I have a problem with that, right? I think like Ryan Grimm and Sagar made a video on the Hill saying that, now it shows that Congress people can say this. But I said, no, those were specific people like Rashid Tlaib and stuff who, of course, were going to come out saying this. But now you can see that, what's her name? The lady with the Somali background, and she made that whole comment, and Ilhan Omar, and all the criticism and everything she received. So I think the part with the US politicians and even in Congress, I think that part of there being changes was a bit blown out of proportion and a bit early to jump to that conclusion.
No, I don't, to be fair though, I don't think so. Like 20, 30 years ago, there was like, you couldn't find anybody.
Sorry, how many years ago?
20 years ago, 2000.
Okay, I'm comparing it more to 6-7 years ago, to the last Gaza attacks.
All right.
And these criticisms, like
even then, you didn't have any congressperson.
I'm sure if Rashiba Tlaib was in Congress back then, I mean, she's Palestinian descent.
But she wasn't, though. That's the thing.
But she could have been. Not. She didn't become because of this.
No, but the whole landscape is changing, I think, in American politics. That's fair. But but yeah, I mean, it's like, there is the famous quote. I kept trying to go find it, but I don't remember it right, and I don't remember if it was said by an artist or a historian. So, but there was this thing. But yeah, it was about the fact that there is this, like, I think it was an artist that was saying that he had no delusion that his works had no influence or whatsoever, and like he had the example he gave, or the historian gave, was that because before the Nazi Germany, Weimar Republic and the cabaret scene in Germany apparently was the most radical, and it was the most free, like they had the most freedom of speech, and they would discuss the most just because I think there is a freedom to talk about issues and stuff, it doesn't mean it's necessarily a movement has become stronger, or or a cause has been revived or stuff.
I didn't say it has been revived or become stronger. I'm not even saying there are more
dead,
people.
I mean.
Huh?
I mean, you said it's not dead. So,
yes.
Revived came from the dead part. But yeah. No, I'm just saying that, just because there are more people who are even concerned about it doesn't, I don't think, okay. So what?
Well, I mean, it shows that the cause is not dead, that it's not like forgotten. There are some people that it's not dead.
Well, it's not forgotten.
I mean, if something's dead, that means there's
it's
nobody there doing anything.
Dead.
Not really. I don't see why it's practically. Maybe it's not achieving anything. Maybe it's not achieving anything that you can see. Like, yes, Palestinians didn't get a state last week, but that doesn't mean that it's dead.
To me, that's dead.
No, not really. It just means that so far the ultimate goals haven't been achieved, and also that doesn't mean that it's unsuccessful, because perhaps the success was that. Go ahead.
Wait, there are still people in France who support the monarchy, right? And try to revive the monarchy.
Yeah.
So their cause isn't dead?
It's not 100% dead, but of course it's probably 99% dead, because there are some people you just mentioned. I just said like how widespread this support was for Palestinian cause. But anyway, Norman Finkelstein has talked now again so much about like he's just back into it, back into Syria. Back about Israel and Palestine and all that. And I would like to hear what he thinks now, because when he made these comments, it was during after a while where Israel Palestine weren't in the news that much, the last Gaza attacks that happened like 5 or 6 years ago. Although what he said is still true. I mean, the UAE leaders and all this didn't do anything, didn't even pay lip service. Only, of course, Qatar and Al Jazeera, who were there in the front lines of the battle against the Israelis.
Egypt.
Well, Egypt.